Hey, this is Warren Redlick. We've got two startups that are happening right now. We've got Rivian and we've got Lucid. Let's compare the two. Are you ready? Let's go. I've got 10 key statistics or data points we can look at to compare Rivian and Lucid. We can start here with market cap. Rivian has a roughly $65 billion market cap according to the IPO that they've filed. I just did a video about Rivian's IPO. You can check it here. When you look at their numbers, it looks like their market cap is going to be about $65 billion. And Lucid Motors, according to the recent share price, has trading at a market cap of around $68 billion. So these two companies are very close in market cap, in valuation. So let's talk more about what are some of the key characteristics of these two companies and how does that translate to real value. First one is, as of October 31, 2021, we have a pretty good sense of how many vehicles each has delivered. Rivian said in their IPO filing that they've delivered 156 pickup trucks, the R1T. Now, nearly all of those deliveries were to Rivian employees, so you could argue that doesn't count. But nevertheless, they've delivered about 156 trucks. Lucid has delivered, as far as I could see, 5 or 6 vehicles. There's some claim they've delivered more. I gave them 20 for this. But you can see right here that Rivian is ahead about 7.5 or almost 8 to 1 over Lucid on the number of vehicles delivered so far. Another really relevant statistic is how many should they deliver by the end of 2021. Rivian in their IPO filing said they expect to deliver a total of 1,000 R1Ts, the pickup truck, and 15 R1Ss, the SUV. So that would give them a total of 1,015 by the end of the year. Lucid, on the other hand, is aiming for somewhere in the ballpark of 520. I've seen different numbers, 577. Those of you who follow me know I don't think they're going to make this number. And it's very possible Rivian won't make their number either. But their targeted deliveries by the end of the year, Rivian is targeting 1,015 deliveries and Lucid is targeting 520. So again, Rivian is ahead here about 2 to 1. The next number is a really big one, cash on hand. Rivian, after the IPO, if everything goes the way it's expected to go, will have $16 billion in their cash pile. Lucid is only going to have about $3.8 billion in their cash pile as of the November 15th report. Probably less than that as of October 31st. They're burning cash. They're not generating revenue. This is normal for a startup. So Lucid's cash pile is much smaller. Rivian is going to have 4 times as much cash, which is going to enable Rivian to continue doing what they need to do to grow their business for much longer than Lucid will be able to do without Lucid having to do a funding round, which they've pretty much said they're going to do a funding round at the end of 2022. Rivian has their funding in order for 2, 3, 4 years. So that's a really good sign for Rivian. You were wondering if I was going to cut my head off, weren't you? So the other step that we see is that Rivian is burning cash fast. According to their IPO document, they burned about $1.25 billion just in one quarter, the quarter ending September 30th, 2021. So they're burning cash fast. That's a pace of nearly $5 billion a year. Once they start producing vehicles, that will offset some of the spending. So it looks like Rivian's burning about $4 billion a year, where Lucid, as far as I can tell, is burning almost $3 billion a year. That means Rivian's money should last them about 4 years. Of course, they're hoping to generate revenue and offset the cash burn. The cash burn will get less. This gives you a sense of how much longer Rivian's cash will last compared to Lucid, which does not expect to significantly scale up production, and their own estimates of how much revenue they're going to generate and their cash flow is going to be highly negative for the next 2 or 3 years. So Lucid is going to run out of cash late 2022, early 2023. They're going to have to do a funding round where Rivian appears to be ahead of that game by quite a bit. That's another advantage for Rivian. Another key advantage for Rivian, the factory that they have built in Normal, Illinois, they describe in the IPO document as having a manufacturing capacity of 150,000 vehicles. Lucid, when they talk about AMP1, their factory in Casa Grande, I believe the number is somewhere around 32,000 to 34,000 vehicles a year that the existing factory is capable of producing. They are planning to build more factory space, but as you can see with their cash pile, they have a problem. Where did they come up with the cash to be able to afford to build another factory? This is a potential problem for Lucid Motors. So again, we see a big advantage. Rivian looks like they're going to be producing about 5 times as many vehicles a year. That's a big advantage. Now, Lucid's vehicles cost more. The Lucid average price that they're targeting is $100,000. The Rivian average selling price is probably around $70,000. But this is still easily a 4 to 1 advantage for Rivian on the way they're heading. If you look out into the future to say 2024, Rivian with 150,000 vehicles a year at $70,000 a piece would generate revenue in the ballpark of $10.5 billion a year. Lucid, with their forecast, which involves adding another factory or more factory space and adding Project Gravity, their big SUV vehicle, on top of the Lucid Air sedan, they're projecting about $9.9 billion of revenue in 2024. So, leaving aside the credibility issue of who's more likely to actually produce this revenue, which we're going to come to credibility later, Rivian is at least a little bit ahead on their revenue projection for 2024. They didn't actually list a revenue projection. This is just my take on what they should be able to generate in revenue, where Lucid has a formal projection of producing $9.9 billion in revenue in 2024. Another big advantage here for Rivian. Rivian claims they have 55,000 orders for their vehicles. This is the R1T and the R1S, their pickup truck and their SUV. This does not include the 100,000 orders they have from Amazon for the electric delivery van. I even left that out. Lucid Motors claims they have 13,000 orders. So leaving out the Amazon delivery van, Rivian has 4 times as many orders as Lucid Motors. Including the Amazon delivery van, Rivian is much, much further ahead. It's more than a 10x, but they have 10 times as many vehicles ordered. This is a pretty dark spot for Lucid Motors. I don't see how they succeed if they can't get people to buy their cars. They have sales locations everywhere. Apparently, people aren't signing up to buy vehicles just by going to the sales location. So this is another troubling issue for Lucid and a big advantage for Rivian. I'm not saying, by the way, that I think either of these is a good investment, but just looking at these so far, it certainly seems like Rivian has a better shot of succeeding. Now, the big strike against Rivian, from what I saw in the IPO document, is dilution. Dilution is when they issue more shares of stock. So if there's 1 million shares of a company out there and the company issues another 1 million shares, you had shares, your shares that used to own, let's say you had 100,000 shares and a company with 1 million shares, you own 10% of the company. If they issue another 1 million shares, now you only own 5% of the company. You've lost your significant stake in the company. 730 million shares is nearly the same number of shares that are going to be outstanding when this IPO is done. So the fact that Rivian may potentially massively dilute their shareholders is not a great sign. And, this is shares that would go into the incentive compensation plan. This is how they would compensate predominantly, I think, RJ Scaringe, the CEO, but also other key employees. Now, Lucid, my ballpark estimate, it's not as clear from Lucid's document. It appears that they could potentially issue 100 million shares. This is much less as a share of the company. So Lucid is much less likely to dilute your holding if you are a Lucid shareholder. Although when they do a funding round, that will dilute your holding in the company, perhaps more so than incentive compensation, stock-based compensation to employees. But I would just say this one is really complicated. It wasn't clear to me how Rivian's plan would distribute shares, basically because they weren't clear. Lucid's plan is a little more clear, but my gut hunch here is that Rivian is much more likely to dilute their stock through incentive compensation. Lucid, on the other hand, will dilute you through their funding round that they're going to do at the end of 2022 or early 2023. And the last big detail that I decided to look at was just, you all know what I think of Lucid Motors. Which of these companies is credible? I find Rivian a much more credible company. Rivian has been letting people borrow their pickups to, prototype pickups to drive around in different circumstances. They've been showing them off in a lot of different ways. And my gut feel with Rivian is they're more genuine. They're not posturing. They're not faking it. I have thought since September 2020, I have thought Lucid was just faking it. Fake it until you make it, all this fluff all the time. So I find Lucid almost completely non-credible, where I find Rivian at least somewhat credible. I'm not sure. I think Rivian still has a lot to prove. Just an example of this is Rivian admitted that their battery pack is 144 kilowatt hours. Lucid appears to me to be lying about the size of the battery pack in the Lucid Air Dream Edition. Their EPA filing suggested that the actual size of the battery pack is 138.6 kilowatt hours. I have a lot of reasons to believe that that's accurate, but they claim it's a 118 kilowatt hour pack to make some sort of vague claim about efficiency. Now, look, I could be wrong about Lucid Motors. My gut is that Rivian is a more credible company. It's more likely that they're telling the truth. I think you could also talk about, in terms of credibility, who's backing these companies. With Tesla, you didn't really have a significant backer as just Elon. With Lucid Motors, you have the Saudis as the primary backer of the company. With Rivian, you have Amazon, Ford Motor Company, and you have T. Rowe Price and another fund, Global Oryx or something like that. There's a few large players that have a significant stake in the company. Now, in both cases, the CEO does not own a majority of the voting rights, or does not control the company. Elon really controls Tesla. In Lucid's case, the Saudis own about 60% of the company. In Rivian's case, the four big holders, Amazon, Ford, T. Rowe Price, and the fourth one, I can't think, Global Oryx or whatever, they own about 54% between them. So RJ Scaringe owns about 10% of Rivian. Peter Rawlinson's holding of Lucid is much smaller by comparison. So, where Tesla, you have a CEO-driven company where he has all the say. With Lucid, is Peter Rawlinson really driving the company, or is he really the public face of the company? The Saudis really have major control over that company. Nobody else really has full control over Rivian. And my gut is that RJ Scaringe has a lot of credibility within the major investors of the company. So he's pretty much going to call the shots. That's also the recent lawsuit against Rivian kind of gave the indication that Scaringe is really calling the shots in this company. So I know that's a short and simplistic view of things, but I just wanted to give a comparison. Rivian's IPO is probably going to be this week, and some people are making a decision, well, I want to invest in the next Tesla. And I, of course, would say invest in Tesla because Tesla is the next Tesla. But if you were looking for investing in an EV startup, I would say Rivian is a lot more promising for the reasons I've laid out, particularly that cash pile. The cash pile, the number of orders, the number of deliveries they've already had, and the genuineness that I feel when I look at Rivian. I just think that's a much more promising opportunity. I still think Tesla's a better investment than both of them. I think Rivian is an iffy investment, but that cash pile gives them a lot of room to run. So if they can actually deliver vehicles, get customers satisfied, if they can get the electric delivery vans moving, you put all that together, then Rivian has a really good shot. And you can add on top of that anytime Amazon wants to, Jeff Bezos can say, we're buying Rivian out. And that would take over the company and shareholders would basically get something. So just a lot of different things come together. I'm not investing anything in either of these companies, certainly not in Lucid, but not even in Rivian. My money's in Tesla. I have some other investments, of course, but I just don't feel that either of these is a really safe investment. Big hurdles to get over doing an EV startup. The fact that Tesla did it doesn't mean it's easy. The fact that no one else has done it in a very long time means it's hard. Will they be able to pull it off? Not clear. My bet would be that Rivian has a much better chance of pulling this off than Lucid. Also, Rivian is, I didn't put this in the sheet, but Rivian is pursuing a niche that I think is stronger. The SUV pickup truck niche has a lot of room in it for an EV because there's no real competitive EV out there yet for pickups and SUVs like that size and form of the Rivian SUVs. Lucid's making a luxury sedan. You've got the EQS out there. You've got the Tesla Model S out there. There's a bunch of luxury sedans, the Porsche Taycan, that are sort of roughly competing in the same space. And that doesn't count the internal combustion engine vehicles, of course. So I think I'm being pretty clear. Rivian looks like a better bet to me. But of course, Tesla is the next Tesla. So please check out my other videos, including in particular my video about Rivian's IPO. Check out my videos about Lucid Motors. Support this channel on Patreon. Thanks to the Vasa Law Firm in Sweden, all my Patreon supporters for helping this channel grow. Check out my other channel, The Daily Lie, on locals. Links to everything in the description below. And thank you so much for watching.